It's that time of year again where you're planning your fall cruise, and the first thing that comes to our mind is always the Canada New England cruise. We went for the second time end of last year, and we had an amazing time, and we thought we would just add that information here. First of all, Embarkation was in Brooklyn, and it was great. We went with Princess, and we were able to get from getting into the port and to leaving or to getting on the ship was like less than an hour.
Yeah.
They let us get on the ship early too.
I'll say we got there at 10:30 at the port, and we were on the ship within an hour.
Yeah, so Princess, props to Princess, but whether you're taking Princess or someone else, know that if you're going out of that cruise port, that's a nice cruise port. We did a quick video. You can just look at that just to get yourself familiar with the area, but we did... I think we Ubered in, right? It was Ubered from the hotel and just got right in there. It was really nice and quick. And our itinerary that we had this time doing Canada New England was a little bit different than our previous Canada New England cruise. So that's always exciting when you do the cruise and there's just a little difference. First of all, we went to Newport, Rhode Island. And then second was Boston. And then Bar Harbor, St. John. And then we finished with Portland. What did you think of the itinerary? Did you think it was a great itinerary, or?
It was really good. I enjoyed the itinerary, and I like that it was different than the first time we went. So we got to see a little bit different how the processes were. Coming into Portland, you had to go through immigration and not during debarkation, so that was different. But I really enjoyed the itinerary this time.
Yeah, and first we did Newport, Rhode Island. This was our second time going to Newport, Rhode Island. Like I said in the previous videos, we never really planned on going to Newport, Rhode Island, but you know, it's a beautiful place. They have lots of sailboats out there, and it's a really walkable city. There's lots of shops you can walk to.
A lot of shops in Newport.
A lot of, and you do take a boat in there, a tender boat off the ship. So make sure you plan accordingly. We had a great time this last year, but I definitely, I would recommend if you're someone that doesn't like tender boats, some people did stay on the boat. Some people just sat in the room and looked at sailboats out their window, because at least with our last two cruises, Newport, Rhode Island tends to be the first day that you're on the ship. The first full day you're going to a port. So that tends to be the port that a lot of people skip because they're just on their cruise and they're ready to get, relaxing, and they don't want to tender boat in. But we had a good time. Did you have a good time in Rhode Island? Or?
I loved Rhode Island. It's a beautiful little coastal town, which I really enjoy. And we almost got the city bus, because there are city buses that will take you to several different stops to get you closer to some of the attractions there. And we went to one of the bus stops, but the timing wasn't very good for us to hop on the bus and go where we were going. So we kind of changed plans and just walked around town, found a playground for our son to play at, met some people that lived there, which were really nice people. And so we had a really good time, and I just love the small shops that you can walk to. Everything is really close to where the tender boat drops you off. So there's a lot of things you can do if you like little shops and cafes. There's a lot of things to do right there in the middle of Rhode Island.
Yeah, and a tip, if you are somebody that is going to get off in Rhode Island, the tender boat, if you do the process and you go down there, wake up in the morning, get breakfast, and then go down there, it's a quick process. But if you're somebody that, your first day on the cruise, of course, you're relaxing, you're getting up late, you're going to breakfast at 10, you're going to have a longer wait. There's a lot more people that will be getting off on tender boats. So be mindful. If you're waking up at 10, you're going to have a hard time going quickly. So be mindful of that. But like I said, I would definitely recommend going and check out the mansions. If we had to do it over again, we would want to check out the mansions, make some time.
Well, and there's a beach there too, that the city bus will drop you off right at the beach.
Yeah.
And so I would do that again. If we had a chance, I would actually go on the bus and go to the beach and hang out on the beach for a little bit.
Yeah, so look at the bus schedule. If you're going to go to Rhode Island, you could do that. And then our second port that we stopped was Boston. We love Boston. Boston's always...
It's one of my favorite places.
it's a great city you could take public transit everywhere. We love the food, love going down there and just having all kinds of good food. And even if you have no plans whatsoever, you can just go in the middle of the city there and just walk and explore. And there's so much history. And man, do you have anything to say about Boston, or you just...
I mean, Boston's one of my favorite places to visit. I love Boston. I love it for the food. I love it for the easy transportation and the history. And there's so much that's just right there in the middle of downtown, or at least where like the Quincy Market, Columbus Circle, or Christopher Columbus Park is. And so there's just a lot right there. It's all walkable, so much history. And it's just a beautiful city if you love architecture and the history. It's just an amazing city to visit.
Oh, definitely. And something to know, we did note it in our other videos, but the cruise port there is about 2 miles away from everywhere you want to be. So you have to take an Uber or a bus. I mean,
you have to plan for transportation, or you're going to be walking 2 miles to get anywhere. And so just know, either plan an excursion, have a bus ticket or something ready, or plan for Uber.
And like I said, you can take a bus, but personally, I would not take a bus because the bus lines are huge. Everybody's taking them.
And they don't really drop you off right there in the middle of town. You have to like jump one bus, go to another bus, go to another bus just to get where you're going.
Take an Uber is like $14.
It was under $15.
And they pick you up right there, and just you're there, and they drop you off, and there's no problems. And you're not having to sit in the crowd, unless you want to sit in the crowd. If you want to sit in the crowd and you have a big pile of people going, and you might want to save $1 or $2, go for it. Just, I would recommend that, of course. But Boston's great, so I'm sure if you're going on the Canada-New England cruise, you're probably doing Newport, you're probably doing Boston. There's a few others that are changing, and the next one is one that I noticed that a lot of people in the city councils have been talking about, getting Bar Harbor, where it's less cruise travelers that come into Bar Harbor. So if you're able to go to Bar Harbor, then that's where we went. And it's a beautiful city. It's right there. This is our 3rd time being there, and we love Bar Harbor. We love to walk Bar Harbor and just explore. But it is something to know that you do actually have to take a tender boat.
Yeah.
So just like Newport, you have to plan accordingly. So if you don't like tender boats, Bar Harbor's, a place you got to take a tender boat. But like, you can enjoy it. You can, it's awesome. And one thing I really enjoy about Bar Harbor is it's the first sunrise in America for the day. I always talk about it because I thought it was cool. I was that weird cruiser with the camera out. It's the first sunrise of the day, and walking around, and cruisers like, okay. But I thought it was cool. I'm like, yeah, it's cool. So you can even sit on your balcony if you have a balcony room and watch the first sunrise of the day. It was gorgeous. Walked around the deck. I had a great time there. And what do you have to say about Bar Harbor? Do you have...
Well, a couple of different things. It is wonderful when you're going into Bar Harbor in the morning to get coffee and just go walk and just look at the landscapes. It is a beautiful cruise into that port. And so that's a really fun thing to do. If you're a morning person, getting your coffee, going for a walk on the decks, it's really enjoyable. I don't mind the tender boats, but we always plan to go first thing in the morning. And so we usually miss the big, like, mid-morning rush. So it's not been a problem for us. I also love Bar Harbor because it's, again, a cute coastal town that's very walkable. And we just love it there. I would definitely say if we went back again, I'd probably want to do like Acadia National, but it was a great little town. Yeah,
and just plan accordingly with the tender boats, okay? So make sure you're aware that it's going to take some time. It's different when you're in a city that you're just walking off and on the boat. So think of it that way. You have to plan accordingly, and you actually have to plan your day. They do have cars, electric cars that you can rent there if you're just wanting to rent a car and not do an excursion. And they do have excursions to Acadia National, and there's also tons of places to get lobster. There's tons of shops that you can just buy a cheap shirt. It's fun. I love it there. It was a great time that we had. And the next spot that we stopped on this last cruise was St. John, Canada. St. John, Canada was going under a lot of construction. They're going to be expanding it, and it's probably this year, I'm assuming, it come the fall time, you'll be able to see the new renovations that they've been doing there. It's supposed to look really nice. So if you go, make sure to update us and let us see some of those pictures. I'm interested to see what St. John's going to look like right next to the ships there, because they're building
their waterfronts. They're doing a lot of work on the waterfront where the ships come in.
Which is really going to help, because one of the cons about St. John's is there's a lot of hills you got to walk, and so it's really awesome because you're in Canada. You have a little markets and just the culture around you. There's coffee shops we always go to. Just what Tim Hortons there.
Mm-hmm.
There's tons of local coffee shops. There's a mall. There's squares out there that you can just go see awesome historical statues and graves, and I know St. John also, don't they have the reverse falls and all that? You can go check out on excursions. So St. John's a really cool city, but once they get that renovation done, you'll be able to not have to go as far out into the city if you're someone that has walking problems, that you're able to actually enjoy and get some souvenirs and check out Canada a lot easier. So St. John, Canada, it's not my favorite port, but it's not bad. So no, you're getting a piece of Canada, but there's a lot of walking. There's a lot of hills. There's some homeless people. You gotta just be careful, and but it's your typical bigger city without being bigger, if that makes sense. So it's cute. And do you have anything, St. John?
You hit most of it. I do like, and the one thing we didn't talk about is when you first get off the ship, at least where Princess was docked, is there's a shipping container little village with a ton of local shopping and local food. So I do think that is worth checking out, because you can get a lot of artisan foods and crafts, and it's just a cute little spot if you just want to get a couple of souvenirs, but you don't want to go walking the whole city. And it's right there off of where the ship was docked.
Definitely. One thing that I also would do, like I said, just go off. One thing I do think that is awesome on this was our first port where you didn't have to walk far off the ship to see something. You could just literally walk off the ship, and there's the shipping containers. You're there. You're in the middle of the city. You're not taking Uber. You're not having to do anything like that. No tender boat. So this is your first city on this cruise that you're able to just get off the ship, and there you are. Buy something for the family from Canada and be like, look what I got you. But St. John's a cool city. And then after St. John, our last port that we stopped on this last cruise was Portland, Maine. We love Portland, Maine. We've done a road trip to Portland, Maine, and we really, after our last Canada New England cruise, we tried to find an itinerary that had Portland, Maine on it. So of course we did it and booked this one, and we had a great time. And one thing that I would recommend is, if you have the opportunity, is to go to see the lighthouse. It's definitely a once in a lifetime opportunity if you're not somebody that goes to New England ever. It's very, very photographed lighthouse. It's beautiful. It's just something about it that's just awesome if you love lighthouses. And then like I said, you're able to take when you get off the ship, there's taxis there. I think we paid like $70.
It was $70 round trip plus tip. And it was an hour of the taxi time. So he actually drove us to the lighthouse. We got out, we walked around.
We went really fast. We didn't want to spend over $70. So he's right there. He waits for you. We were running around checking the lighthouse, getting some video, and then we made sure to get back. But
yeah, and so for us, being 3 people, to pay for an excursion where you're paying per person, it would have been a lot more expensive. It worked out great for us. We just got the taxi. He stayed there and waited for us at the lighthouse and brought us right back to the ship. And it worked out really well for the cost.
Yeah, definitely. And I would definitely recommend, if you're going to Portland, Maine, the Holy Donut. We went years ago to the Holy Donut when it was just tiny and nothing.
And now they have like 3 shops.
Now they have 3 shops apparently, and everybody goes there, but it's the potato donut.
It's worth it. It's so good.
You're going to see a long line, and every tourist that you've ever seen going there, but it's so good, and it's something that you definitely got to do. And my wife had lobster.
Yep.
You always got to have lobster. And then that kind of leads me into must-dos on the Canada New England cruise. Like things that I would recommend if you're going on a Canada New England cruise that you got to do. And the first I would recommend would be lobster, yes. Of course. I mean, the first time we did this trip, we did a road trip years ago. And
we had lobster like 5 times.
Lobster everywhere. Of course, it was a lot cheaper back then.
Yes.
So it may not always be in your budget to do a lot of lobster, but you gotta do lobster. It's just something about it. being in New England, or fish and chips or clam chowder. You got to get some seafood while you're on the Canada New England cruise, because that's where it's at.
It's fresh.
So that's definitely a must do. I do think if you're going to Bar Harbor, a must do if you've never been there would be
Acadia National Park.
Acadia National Park. Beautiful. If you love national parks, you're going to love it. You're going to love the views. You're going to love even going just the scenery on the ocean there. And it's beautiful. So definitely, if you've never done it, you have to do Acadia National Forest. You can do an excursion. You can rent a car.
Yeah, they have the electric cars right off the port. And you can there's like a city bus that runs during the peak season that will drop you off at different locations.
And believe it or not, when we were on our ship, there was actually a couple that walked up to it, remember?
Oh, I forgot about
that. Yeah, they walked to Acadia from the ship and then came back. And
I forgot about that.
So if you're adventurous, you can walk it too, but I'm not that adventurous. But definitely if you go to Portland, Maine, you got to see the lighthouse. Mm-hmm. I recommend that.
And the donut.
And the donut. And then if you go to Canada, you got to buy something. You got to get something. You got to get some. I like to get some of that Canada currency. It just feels like, I don't know, just
different.
It's just different. You get to see, ooh, this is what a Canada $5 bill looks like, or coins, and I think that's cool. So if you go to Canada, you got to buy something and you got to try something. If you go to Canada, you got to try whether it's chips or, they have
beaver tail.
The beaver tails, or you got to try some.
I want to try poutine next
You got to try something from Canada, or donuts, or coffee, or you got to get some of that culture. You got to enjoy yourself. But if since we've been on 2 Canada New England cruises now, if we had something to do over, like if I was talking to myself before doing this trip, there's a couple things I would say. I would make sure I pack some good walking shoes. My last time we did this, my shoes messed up and they were the wrong shoes. Or if you just pick a normal pair of shoes, you're gonna regret it. You're gonna make sure you have
There was a lot of hoka shoes, I think they're called. Hoka, I think, and then a lot of Brooks. That's one thing. I was watching the people on the ship to see what shoes people were wearing, and a lot of Brooks and a lot of Hokas.
So make sure they're comfortable. Not just like, oh, I'm going to the gym for an hour. Make sure these shoes are comfortable, because you're going to do a lot of walking. Mm-hmm. It's worth it.
Yeah.
But you're going to put some miles on those shoes. So you may want to get a fresh pair of shoes ready for this trip. So I would tell myself that. I would also look over itineraries. I know a lot of these are, they're going to throw Newport and Bar Harbors and Portlands, but I really liked Halifax. So if I was to go again, I would go to Halifax. I would make sure Halifax was on my list. And, Portland, Maine is gorgeous and it's fun to drive, but it's a lot harder when you're going on a cruise ship, because you're dropped kind of in the middle of nowhere and you're going to have to walk a long ways. The lighthouse is like 18 minutes away. Yeah. I mean, you can walk to the Holy Donut, and the shops are really spread out. And I mean, do you think the same thing? Like,
yeah, it's not horrible where you're getting dropped off. It's not like Boston where you're 2 miles from anything. But yeah, you're not going to be near the lighthouse. Like, that's not a walkable option. And so there are some things down on the waterfront where you can go walk and do, but
they're very spread out though.
But it's very spread out.
And like I said, it's fun, but when you're doing a lot of traveling, it's nice to have places like Halifax where things are all like.
Well, and Halifax has an amazing waterfront, and you can walk it from the ships. And it's a really easy, like, there's a wooden path, and you just follow the wooden path all the way down the waterfront. Loads of shopping, loads of food, and it's just gorgeous.
Oh yeah, so Halifax is definitely something I would tell myself to make sure that's on my excursion, if possible, or that's on my itinerary if possible. And then also, I recommend cruise ships important. I know a lot of times we just look at itineraries and, the overall, overall value. Like, okay, well, this cruise costs $3,000 and this one costs $3,200. I'm going to go with the $3,000 one, when the cruise ship is important. I mean, this last cruise we did, even though every itinerary situation wasn't perfect, because the ship was better, it made the cruise so much better for us. So make sure you pick a ship that goes with your personality, you know. And if you're somebody that wants to do a lot of entertainment as well, you better pick a ship that has a lot more entertainment. And if you're someone that's more scaled down, make sure you have a scaled down. Even if it costs you a few $100 more, it's worth it because you're spending all this money to do this trip anyway. Make sure you pick the right cruise ship. So that's something I would tell myself, even if it costs a little bit more, pick the right cruise ship. If you have to change your week and you're right, you know, to get that right cruise ship, do it. And last thing I would tell myself if I was to look back and plan it would be make sure you plan something in Newport.
Yes.
Newport is a hard city to wing it. Yes, there's some shops, but their hours are different, and it's your first day on the trip. It typically tends to be the first stop that ships do. So I would definitely plan something, whether you do an excursion. If you're going to do an excursion, you can wing it in Boston. You can wing it in St. John. And, you know, in Portland, Maine, you could just go, well, I'm going to take an Uber to the lighthouse or Bar Harbor. You can shop everywhere. But Rhode Island's a lot harder to just do that. And it's like a lot of walking. So I would recommend that. And then one thing that we thought was interesting, and maybe we're just weird, but you want to explain the Portland, Maine, like it was interesting because on this itinerary, when you come back into America,
the immigration process. Yeah, because this was very new for us. When you're going out of country, like you go to Canada, the next time you come into port on this itinerary, we weren't coming straight back into our debarkation port.
Yeah, we weren't going back into Brooklyn, so
yeah, so we were going into Portland, but because it's your first time coming back into the country after being out of the country, you have to go through the full immigration process, and it was long.
And everybody had to get off the ship. Even if you had nothing you wanted to do in Portland.
Yeah, and everybody was assigned to groups, and you couldn't go through immigration until your group was called. So even though we got to Portland at like 8 o'clock in the morning, we didn't get off the ship until an hour and a half later, just because the immigration process took that long. And so that is something to think about. If you are planning excursions, or if you have any like set plans in Portland, make sure you have time to get through immigration, or you're going to run into some serious problems with the timelines if you're not one of the first groups off the ship. And so I thought that was really interesting, going through immigration, not during your debarkation day, but at a port. But it also made debarkation way faster.
Yeah, when you got back, it was just like you're just off the ship like this, and it was like, so that was great.
It saved like an hour of time getting off of the ship, just not having to go through immigration.
Yeah, so you're good, but it does put that damper on you. I know a lot of frustrated people on the ship because they didn't know, and a lot of people were like, by the end of the cruise, they weren't even going to get off the ship, but they had to get off the ship. Everybody has to get off the ship.
There were a lot of frustrated people because they didn't plan to get off the ship, but they had to, because you had to have every single person go through immigration at the port.
And you had times. So even if you were like, I'm staying up till midnight and going to bed, you had a time you had to get off the ship. So that made it a little, I know a lot of people when you're cruising, you don't want a schedule. You don't want set times. And that made a lot of frustrated people. We worked around it. We were okay. And if you go with the flow, but if you're not those, maybe you look at an itinerary that has Portland, Maine before you go into Canada, because going into like St. John and then coming back into America, dealing with all that is a headache that maybe I would tell myself, don't do that. Just do Halifax. Don't do Portland, Maine if it's the last stop after a Canada port.
Well, and it messed up our Uber from the ship to the airport, because we had expected a longer time getting off the ship. And it went so fast, we ended up sitting on the curb waiting for the Uber for an extra like 45 minutes because we got off the ship thinking we had to go through the whole process as normal. Thankfully, our Uber was early, but had he not been, it would have been even longer, just us sitting looking for a bench on the side of the road.
So in saying all this, Canada New England cruise is my favorite cruise I've ever been on. It's definitely a cruise that you don't see everybody going on, but I loved it. To me, it's amazing. I want to go again. It's hard not to book it every year, but man, it is an amazing cruise. And if you're still watching this video, like and subscribe, man. It's a great cruise, and if you're thinking about it, I definitely recommend going on the Canada New England cruise. And if you have any questions, any comments, we're here to, as much as we know, we're willing to help, because I know when I was looking, we had so many questions, and I would watch all these videos, and they were just, it just kind of like you're watching a show of a video. When I want information, I'm like, I'm trying to make a good decision here. So like I said, if you have any questions, let us know.